Welcome to a poetry reading of Every Day in Love, Love's Dead, the complete collection. This is actually a 3-book collection. It comprises Every Day in Love 1, 2, and 3. You can find the original covers for each of those books inside of this one, next to their table of contents. The first one was Every Day in Love, the straight-to-DVD movie. The second one was Every Day in Love 2, Lovebound, and the third one was Every Day in Love 3, Love Warriors. I had such a great time with this project. It started in grad school and it carried on a few years later. Basically, it is a love letter to horror cinema, and it focuses on the imaginary, of course, relationship between myself, Freddy Krueger, and Pinhead. We are all married. We adopt Jason Voorhees in the first book. In the second book, Samara from The Ring, Sammy from Trick or Treat, they join us. We adopt them. And the third book, Chucky, unfortunately, becomes an extra in our lives as Billy the Puppet from the Saw movies becomes our roommate. The first book that I'm going to be reading from here first, of course, is a lot more abstract and poetic, so you'll definitely hear it in the way that I constructed these poems. But let's just hop right in. I'm going to start out with a couple of poems that open up the first book. Wedding Portrait with Freddy. Hundreds and hundreds of hours in counseling. Freddy, why did you commit these crimes? I don't know. You are a low-down, mean, despicable, evil manifestation of a human being that preys on little children. Wedding Portrait with Pinhead. With both legs badly bruised from a vicious beating, I can only move around with a painful shuffle. Pinhead and a black leather crop. From 11:30 to 3:30 in the morning, I came in every 15 minutes and beat you with sticks, fists, kicks, and a black leather crop. I don't deny there are some violations. I will be doing some voices every now and then to try to show you parts where I denoted they were talking. So forgive me if it's a little dramatic. I'll be the Pope if you'll be the big spoon. Pull out on a bed, a police uniform on the chair, his hand on the bed's metal frame, tell you, grip the bed, and then around the room. Angel dust? Don't tell me leather's back in fashion. Slash and dash expert Jesus, prick away. Grocery shopping. I sent Freddy to get some Cap'n Crunch, and I told Pinhead to just find something he would want to eat Saturday night because I would be out at that function and he would have to fend for himself. I'm waiting with Freddy at the checkout. We watch Pinhead slow walk from the end of the aisle, empty-handed. Now, the majority of the poems in all 3 of these books were actually put together by taking the scripts of their movies and drawing a shape relevant to their storyline on the script, picking words at the corners or edges of anything that I drew on there, and putting that into Google. And then whatever came up on Google search, the first result would be the topic of the poem. So you'll find that while I end up in a lot of domestic situations, there are a lot of poems that seem like very out there and abstract. It's because I was working from a very awkward starting topic. But there are also long-form poems in all of these books where we watch their movies and the poems are in script format as we heckle them. So this is from just a section from the middle of watching Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which is the really gay one. Lisa wanders into the boiler room where Freddy took Jessie, leading up to this final confrontation. Freddy, did you see that? Lisa was walking perfectly fine, no reason to touch her hand, anything for support. And then she reaches up and touches a steaming pipe and is surprised when it burns her. These kids are literally asking for it. Pinhead, and she seems to be on drugs, slapping her wound because she thinks there are bugs crawling out of it. What does that really accomplish, Freddy? And since when can you just do illusions on waking people? Freddy, accomplish? Hell, it's just funny. Pinhead, please stop scraping your claws. You could have killed her 5 times now. Just make the final cut. Freddy, the goal obviously isn't to kill her. Pinhead, oh, well, clearly. I, okay, then what is the goal? Pinhead, did she just kiss you? I, you wrapped your hand around her head. You seemed pretty into it. Freddy, no, 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 look, here, I set all the metal in the room on fire. I, again, with the fire, we get it, you burn to death. Each of those script poems are like well over 20 or 30 pages long, so I highly suggest getting a hold of the book to actually get those in their entirety. This is On Finding Fan Film, The Nightmare Ends on Halloween 2. Down the dark decades of your pain, this will seem like a memory of heaven. What's going on? What have they done to me? It is only fitting. Nothing belongs to you. The instant your final movie ended, your soul belonged to them. All right, no more IMDb in this household. This is Every Day with Pinhead. 4 cookies, same batch of dough. Why did they brown differently? It's all in the pan. I wouldn't set my oven to that temperature. I would not use parchment. I check with a toothpick every 3 minutes and write down changes in time. Do you want to treat the family to perfectly baked cookies, then? This is your bake time. Raising Jason 3. For whatever reason, people really don't think about how he feels about the ordeal. Kid died from negligence. His mother went over the edge avenging him, and then he gets called up out of hell for some reason. Damned to avenge his batshit insane mother, and he's what, 10? Freddy kicked his ass once, even pretended to be his mother for a bit to control him. Jason forgave pretty quickly, mostly because he's a really good kid. Freddy brought him around one day after counseling, asking if Penny and I would watch him for the day. I didn't know it was the anniversary of his death. After the first Christmas, Jason became a staple of every holiday. Then, not too much later, just a staple of the household. One of the things about writing this project is, of course, that these characters are despicable in so many ways and do really horrific things. So one of the things I started to grapple with, especially dealing with Freddy, is that he is a child predator. Depending on which first movie you're looking at, the original or the reboot, he's either a child killer or a pedophile. So that's something you have to consider if you're doing a project such as this one. So this is Ways to Cope. I always tell Freddy not to drink before bed. It gives me nightmares when he slips into my dream and forgets our vows and death does us part. He gave me a website with ways to cope. 1. Deep breath. Look at your surroundings. Assure yourself that the nightmare you saw wasn't real. 2. If you share a bed with someone, tell them you had a nightmare. They will understand. 3. If they are asleep, lay your head on their chest and listen for their heartbeat. 4. Avoid scary movies near your bedtime. These images stay in your mind. Every Day with Pinhead. I picked this up today. Rips like crazy. The gravity bong is my favorite. Such fertile seeds for torment. You're so ripe and it's harvest time. Just give me the bong and I'll free you from the future. Pinhead, you have to share. Complete the pattern, solve the puzzle, turn the key, fill the bowl. By helping me, you will help yourself. I like to imagine that Pinhead is very dramatic, in case that's not clear. And this is the last poem of the first book. It's called A Life Together. This is a long one, so, sit in. A life together. They've died already at least once, and I am a sick old man who's also ill. Freddy and Pinhead are by my side, holding my hands, and Freddy is trimming the roses Jason brought for me. Pinhead is crocheting another small blanket for my feet, which get cold, and they're telling me how wild of a ride it's been, and I'm dead. But before that, I was alive, and we were walking along the beach, considering hospice, and Pinhead told me about the time he watched his own death when we watched the 4th movie, which still had sequels anyways, and Freddy reminds me he burned to death, and this wouldn't be so bad, really. I lean heavily on Freddy's arm and cough lightly, and before that we were in Hawaii, talking about our 40th anniversary. What a honeymoon we had each year. Freddy flipped a table for old time's sake, and Pinhead agreed not to kill the DJ and make him his slave, and we laughed and laughed and laughed, and we were at the table at home looking for places to go online, and the TV was telling us about golden destinations. We looked up new honeymoon destinations, even though it had been 40 years, and we did this every year since we got married, and France was off the table because of the time Freddy had spent there, and Pinhead wasn't a fan anyways, but I suppose I never saw the Louvre. Freddy tended to his gardens, which he always wanted to do but spent years thinking about, and Pinhead never got a job really, but he sold things on eBay and made enough to pay for the cable, which only he really watched anyways. How many times did Jason bring Freddy home drunk? Where did Jason even learn to drive, living at the bottom of a lake and only coming up once every few years to kill a bunch of 20-somethings? There were worse things than having an eternal child drive your drunk husband home. I remember the first time I found the blood, and it wasn't blood like I was used to finding in the house. It was mine, and it wasn't a joke or intimate, and I didn't say anything. So Freddy and Pinhead fought during our 30-second honeymoon again about which of them I cared about more, and I wondered why they were worried since we were all married. I kept asking when they would sleep together, and we had separate bedrooms for a long time, but not me. I already had to start using the pill to keep it up, and neither of them minded, but I kept wondering when I would look as old as I was beginning to feel. Pinhead offered me so many skin solutions, and he offered to peel off my skin, and I couldn't quite go that far. Freddy held my hand and shushed my sobs in the night and told me I was still the man he married, and he was sorry, but it would be okay someday, and I was worried I was old already, and the jokes had begun on my part at our 20th anniversary. We had invited everyone along, and Chucky and Jigsaw and Jason and Michael and other of Freddy's friends showed up. And Pinhead invited the Cenobites from hell, and it was great, and I joked that I was old, knowing that everyone else there was older. And at my birthday that year, they all played a prank on me with the mask from Scream, and we all laughed and laughed. I began to become more worried that all my friends were serial killers, and then I remembered I married two, and how much safer could you be than sleeping with the enemy? I can't admit to cheating on either of them, but Pinhead did. I wanted to hate him for it, but I knew he spent all day at home alone, and he killed the pool boy afterwards, so I didn't have anyone to be angry with. Freddy was right angry with him, and threatened him with his claws, and it didn't work since I had already done that in the bedroom. I came around a few months later because Pinhead was gaining weight, doing nothing but eating ice cream and crying over reruns of Gilmore Girls, and while I loved the show, I couldn't hear any of the dialogue over Pinhead's sobs. I never got any ice cream, and I only slept with Freddy for those months, and that was the only time it was that way, or the only time I knew, and that was fine, I decided afterwards. Before that, we had been quite chummy, the three of us, and Jason too, who spent every Christmas with us since we got together, and he didn't have any family to speak of anymore, and sometimes Freddy dressed up like Jason's mother, and we couldn't see the smile under Jason's mask, but you could tell. That was nice. I kept thinking about how Freddy had been terrible, and he had been, but now he had something to be doing, and it wasn't always like that. In the first 3 years, we had found things that made Pinhead and I sit down with Freddy, and I don't want to say too much, but he began seeing a counselor, and that's when the drinking began. Honestly, I think he gained control over it, and the only bodies we found in the house were skinned, and Freddy and I both agreed those were Pinhead's victims. I remember that we were looking for a house that fit our needs even a year into marriage, and it was hard to find a place with a drain in each room's floor that didn't look like a total horror movie. I kept bouncing between Freddy's boiler room apartment and Pinhead's loft and home again, and it was a nightmare giving both of them the time they needed. When we were getting married, how jealous each one was for time with me, how many photos had to be retaken with just one of them, and the photographer really got us with extra fees for how many pieces of equipment Pinhead had merged into our guests' bodies when he made them demons. And Freddy refused to pay them, but I didn't have the money, and Pinhead never really had a job, so Freddy learned to foot the bill everywhere we went. Freddy and I both had to get extra jobs to get the wedding off the ground. My parents wouldn't show up to a murderers' union, and I learned to accept that. They were never really happy with our dating either, and I never really had to spring the fact that I was seeing them at the same time. Freddy was the bad boy, and I felt like the dumb girl in the made-for-lifetime movie. There are times when you make mistakes, but that wasn't one of them. And Pinhead came almost a year later, but he was new and exciting and much more involved in the bedroom. I didn't bother to tell Freddy because he heard, and maybe I should have told him first, but they seemed to get along, and we would go on double dates with just the three of us. I was a weird pin in our three-way, and they smiled so much together, and I didn't ask them to marry me. They asked me to marry them. And so we begin Every Day in Love 2, Lovebound. The first book was a lot more poetic, generally. Some of it was very straightforward. But in this collection, things got a lot more episodic. Each poem was kind of like a view into a quirky moment at home with some of the people there. So we're going to start with the first poem because it sets the stage. The kids at play. Samara, Sam, parentheses, Sawin, and Jason all in the woods playing tag with the other children. It's hard to explain to the other parents at the park that Jason is actually closer to 10 than his appearance of 30, and Samara is closer to 30 than her appearance of 10, and Sammy is probably never human to begin with. But playtime is playtime, and Freddy sketches them in the leaves, a new pastime he picked up from therapy. It's lovely and black and white, and yet I think to myself I should buy a box of nice colored pencils on the way home. While the poem at the end of the first book suggested what the future would be, the poems in these next two books really get into a lot more of it. So this is The Bay with Samara. Samara is the evil character from The Ring, for people who aren't familiar with the name. The Bay with Samara. The girl loves her lighthouses, so Freddy and I packed up the car and drove out to the nearest bay, which is a while away. The plastic crinkled in the back the whole way, keeping Samara's endless dampness from soaking the entire seat for only a while, until she shifted it to be more comfortable. More water stains for the water stains. Freddy even dressed for the occasion, trading his green red for a white red, mimicking to his best the pattern of the lighthouse. Samara was less fascinated by the building than she was by the rocky beach. As she began to go into it, I couldn't help but to start to warn of the danger. Freddy stopped me. What does she have to fear? She already died once. Our little girl on the edge of the ocean, watching the water splash over her bare ankles and soaking herself into it. Jason, the big brother. Now, Jason is already technically a big brother to anything that is considered to be related to him. I mean, the guy is huge. So when he said he was a big brother to Freddy, who translated for me, I just shrugged. What else was new? Then he shared the pamphlet with us. Oh, I said. That kind of big brother, I said. I wasn't sure what to say about it at first, mostly worried about having a young kid around a murderer of the past. I mean, how would they even communicate, I thought. Then I met Derek. Cutest, mousiest little 12-year-old. Derek was deaf, and while Jason hadn't known ASL before, he was learning it very quickly. I still don't know if Jason can actually talk, or if the grunts are all he can muster, but now the house is taking weekend classes learning to sign. Samara and Sammy have become much more clear in their intentions, and I realized I was an idiot for thinking we had a bunch of strangely mute, undead children. Derek doesn't quite fit in with the rest of our children, them being real monsters, but I've never seen such a big smile on a kid's face as the first time we went to the pool together. Did you know Jason can walk underwater at normal speed? Never seen so many children run screaming from a pool in my life, but Derek just hollered and laughed as they played for hours. Samara and the cat. She wanted it when she saw it twitching and shaking in the pound, and we warned her that it was sick. She twitched at the same speed, cocking her head at us, wondering why it would be sick. When it came home, we knew it wasn't long for this world, so Samara decided to make it a game. They spent the days twitching across the floor in spasms and errant body flips. Chasing the laser pointer, Penny lazily wiggled while reading a magazine. The first day I found the cat soaking wet, I wanted to ask, but Samara rarely talks, so it was moot. The second time, I realized it didn't have a heartbeat. Resigning myself to be on cleanup duty with the thing, I went to put it in a garbage bag, and it woke it up. It's been damp ever since, and the spasms haven't stopped. Samara drew it in crayon down in the well with her. By the time that I was working on the second book, I realized that I hadn't written a poem about having Halloween with the family in the first book, so I thought I should do that here in the second one. So this is All Hallows with the fam. It goes without saying that Halloween is a big deal in our household. Uncle Mike comes over, and it's the one time of year Sammy lets us clean his onesie to look his tip-top best for the occasion. The first year I offered to take him out from home to home, but he disappeared on me after the first one, returning home later that night with 3 bags of candy, 2 jack-o'-lanterns, and a severed finger. Samara sticks it out with Slushy, her kitty, while Penny and Freddy lead Jason door to door. Freddy tells the jokes while Penny ensures they give Jason more candy than they give the other kids who come by. By the time we finish our rounds with Jason, we come home to the house decorated properly. Uncle Mike is no slouch when it comes to it. And a few more friends each year. Ghostface and Chucky are staples, but lately the roster's become almost too big for our house. Leatherface was an early addition. And with him came a number of mask wearers, one a baby mask, another in an uncomfortable black asphalt-looking thing, and 3 strangers. Pennywise brings enough japes to tide over the kids. Are there ever kids? Children of the Corn, some run-of-the-mill murderers, weird kids who pretend to be adults, or adults who pretend to be kids, more than a few antichrists, ghosts of orphans. It goes on. And the adults party down to some of the weirder remixes that Jigsaw puts together. Every year I ask Penny what happened to the DJ Cenobite, and each year he tells me he doesn't want to talk to the guy. The parties always end the same, really. The music gets slower, perhaps by torturous design, and the stories begin. I would be lying if I said the stories were always the same, but even the new ones seem to be like the old ones. Then the bragging begins. Freddy used to be the worst about it, but counseling and therapy and sobriety have really changed his goals. Penny still waits until after stories are finished to one-up them, and Jason still just smiles through the worst parts. You can see the smile in his eyes. He has the warmest eyes. I don't ask anymore about the victims in the stories. Sammy eventually knocks on the door for help with his haul for the night. Samara helps him with his candy, and Jason disposes of the body parts. I set the jack-o'-lanterns up near the front door with new candles, never really wanting to ask whose they were. When the party finishes, the boys make their bets and head out into the woods. I learned after the first year I didn't want to be part of this particular game. I find them all asleep throughout the house in the morning, and I make breakfast. Of course, we don't just have family, don't just have husband and children. We also have Uncle Mike that I just referred to, so let's learn a little about him. This is the one you don't want outside. When I mentioned that Freddy had done some landscaping, I was mostly referring to his stint with Uncle Mike's landscaping business. Michael is strangely still in business, even though he's probably the most unnerving person to have outside your home for long periods of time. More than once he went inside to speak to the homeowners or to get a glass of water and was stabbed, shot, or just generally maimed. Thankfully, he is as undying as my husband's, and lived through the 32 attempted killings to offer Freddy the job in the first place. Still, there are times when Mike comes by unannounced. He doesn't ring the doorbell. He has 2 modes: waiting at the window, or already inside, just behind you. This is A Place for Two. Freddy has been looking for more things to do with Jason lately, and Penny claimed he had just the thing. An afternoon at Home Depot later, and we had all the things to make our backyard into a real garden. At first, I worried about the cost, but Penny assured me that Sammy had been making some money with, quote, some businesses, unquote. When he told me how much, I stopped worrying. Jason took to it quickly. He's always loved getting his hands down in the dirt, though he refuses to wear gloves. Freddy tried for a week to make his glove knives useful, before staying up one night to make a new glove with tiny trowels. I was at first happy to have a garden in the backyard. I thought, oh, how nice, we'll have tomatoes ripe from the vine. And, oh, how nice, fresh chives. Then the first package arrived in the mail for some poisonous flower, and now half the neighborhood animals have been buried under a garden of fucking poison. Here's to father and son time. Steady service. When it comes to pleasure, Penny is an empress of pain, but when it comes to sex, Penny is always at an 11. For most people, this would be incredible, but I am just a human being, and he's a literal hell demon. With school, Penny has been more and more busy, and it's a little creepy how much he's into studying his human anatomy schoolwork while we're fucking, so while at one time it was a dream, it has faded. More than luckily, I have my dream man, though, and he's more than happy to pick up the slack. I never thought I'd be happy with just good sex after having the most actually incredible sex possible. But there's something that comes with basic knife play after a few years of hard bondage that's like a nice breeze on a sweaty, leather-strapped, flogged, and beaten day. It's not like Freddy is my fallback or anything, certainly not, in either of our understandings, but he plays into it, asking, does Pinhead do this? After each slip of a knife. When it comes to pleasure, Penny is an empress of pain. But when it comes to service, Freddy is a regular Joe. And sometimes, more deluxe things are worse. This one is Cardio for Killers. Mike showed me some weird stuff, for sure, like how to stab in different ways. But I'm learning that it's not just that. Penny doesn't take part in training. I never have to run after people. What about in the third movie when you chase Joey across the city? I still just walked. But for Freddy, Jason, Mike, Chucky especially, running can be very important, and I'm learning that I'm out of shape. So some walking, stairs, a little exercise, but only dramatically and in text. I don't do this kind of thing in real life. Do I sound like some kind of nut? This is actually the first poem I'm reading from the third book, Every Day in Love 3, Love Warriors. I mentioned Chucky, so let's pop back to the start of this book to find out what happened here. Full House of Horrors. Previously on Every Day in Love. I married 2 undead serial killers, the lovely Penny and the family man Freddy. Then we adopted 2 amazing children, Samara and Jason, and a small creature, Sawin, or Sammy for short. But time moved on. Jason grew up, and he moved out. He still comes by every week to watch a movie and have dinner, but his empty room couldn't stay empty. A puppet couldn't be a better roommate, we thought. It's too bad about his friend, though. This is Penny, the GM. Welcome to my play-by-post forum. Players should subscribe to this thread, but not the other one. That is for private conversations between players. I invite you to engage in mystery, find strength in unity, but more than any other thing, to find the strife inherent in your humanity. Can I go to the brothel? Yes, but of course. You arrive at this den of minor depravity. I want to fuck a bitch with big tits. There are many to choose from, but you find they have been waiting for you, for it is time now for a supper of flesh. Is that sex? Their breasts roll to the ground, massive and pendulous, their vaginas crevices into the darkness, their twitching legs dangle from within. What? Roll for your initiative. I like to think that we get up to fun game nights in our household. The thing with the third book here is that after the more abstract poetry of the first book and then the more episodic poems of the second book, I kind of was looking for something in between. I was also wondering how you even end a collection like this, and I knew that the third book would be the end. This book is 600-something pages, so it was time. So throughout the third book, you find poems like this one, Collapse. A building undergoes progressive collapse when a primary structural element fails. When they start, they just can't stop falling in on themselves. These buildings that begin to break when the first one dies, just a torrent of those who start dying. No different than these sources. Once the first one goes, it just can't stop failing. You probably know this, that when the movie finally sees itself in its bare skin, it just can't help itself. One more becomes one more in bodies and sequels of bodies, and we're ready for more. If we could just please have it, a single piece more. Oh, just one, but not like that, so maybe another? Friendly show. You'd think that it would be impossible for Chucky, a doll that was child's best friend turned murderer, to get a show kids were meant to watch. But do you know the shit that kids watch on YouTube now? Samara's running sound from it, Mike's executive producing, and Sammy is gleefully editing it for the internet. Chucky never figured out how to use computers. They went verified a month ago and are turning a decent paycheck for their star now, which honestly should get this setup out of my house, but that's wishful thinking. Every day with me. When the house is empty and the movies are on their shelf, I'm sitting alone on the couch. When the halls are quiet and no one is in the kitchen and there's nothing to say. When the story is calm and I'm finally entirely alone, I can hear a clock ticking down. Every day was Slushy. When Slushy joined the house, she was a fine cat, a little too food-motivated. She ate Jason's sandwich from his mouth, and he let her. But I hadn't expected or been prepared for the cat to become an undead, eternally damp creature. Neither did the furniture. I keep a towel on me most days, near my computer chair. When I sit, it could be any moment that lap time begins. I love cats. I have a cat of my own, so little biased about this cat that I added to the family. Jason's new apartment. It seemed inevitable that, as he got better jobs and climbed in life, our biggest son would want a place of his own. Considering he doesn't need to eat or drink or need a usable toilet, budgeting an apartment from what he made was surprisingly easy. What surprised me was when he said he didn't want any help moving in, something I came to better understand on our first official visit. His house is so much nicer than ours, and that's saying something with how much money Penny has spent on decorating and redecorating the place. Not just clean, but crisp. Each room a different world, different paint, different styles. From the Tuscan bathroom to the medieval Gothic kitchen. The aligned energies of feng shui. I hired an expert, he signs. When I tell him our next movie night will have to be here, he looks a little disappointed. Oh no, Penny realizes. We're the messy bitches. Every day with Samara. You never explained how I got here, she signs. And no, I suppose I didn't. Be honest. Why me and not anyone else? Samara, I wanted you when I saw you. The other diners look on at our mother-daughter weekly date. It can be nice to be wanted. It can't it? Samara and I hold hands as we step out of that TV show's diner back into our living room. Same time next week? Wouldn't miss it for the world. A son who murders. Look, they all have. I mean, both of my husbands, my 3 children, our newest roommate, all our friends, or theirs, I mean, they're all murderers. But by the end of Eden Lake, Jason didn't understand why. If they were just kids, just normal humans, why? Why did they take the man and torture him? Why did they want to do that? Why did they seem reticent? Why did they have to scare each other into it? The whys identified his concerns with himself, and mine too. What drives people to kill when they're normal, like me? Are any of them that strange, that evil? If even children can do this, what makes my family what they are? But more, if even the unsurprising, if even the unclearly murderous, if even the average, then what's left? The social worker. Every year we get a new gift from the government. A confused recruitment of one of our kids, a court case against our marriage, or over one of their past crimes. The newest confused person is Karen Hugg, the social worker assigned to us to see if our children are taken care of. We tried to go above board with the adoptions. So they're all unrepentant killers? Jason is starting to feel bad about it a little sometimes. Jason is the demon. No, that's Sammy. Jason is the fully grown man. You told me he was 10. Yeah, in some way I think he is still. And you have your daughter sleep submerged in a bathtub. Yeah, because that's how she died. It's like a security thing. And Sammy runs his own businesses? Yeah, but I grounded him, so he shouldn't be right now. Well, the report he gave shows 3 active scams he's currently running. Well, boys will be boys. Gosh, we don't say that anymore. I think I have some books I'm going to recommend. Oh, you can give any reading stuff to Penny. That's the husband in the BDSM casual. A husband who heals. Penny is a surgeon now. A very quick move up the career ladder with experience to make change and positive health outcomes. Freddy is a sleep therapist, helping people move on from their nightmares and night terrors and helping quiet the traumatic dreams. I sure made them this way, huh? Who could love a child murderer, a torture demon? I can only be what you want me to be, Freddy says. I know. Do you want to be hard on me? For me to be hard on you? To feel the addiction and the horrors and the trauma, he asks? No, I don't. Then don't. I wake up from this eventually. Immortality. I know ghosts and shamans and sorcerers or necromancers. Like I know serial killers and slashers and demons or lovers. This is the space where I could give back life if I wanted. This story could be about how we travel the Midwest, stopping miscarriages and stillbirths, curing cancer, saving us from ourselves and our bodies. But our fantasies together are never like that. So little is it worth it to think about reality over your fantasy like that. I'd save a baby, signs our largest son. I know you would. But your writers and I only dreamed of you killing. The rest of the book leads into the quiet break of the story. I'm obviously quite biased, but I highly suggest getting and reading the last 30 pages or so. I realize I have to put all of the characters to bed in some way, send them back to their stories where other people can write silly stories and fan fiction about them, but it's no longer my domain. So that was selections of Every Day in Love, Love's Dead, the complete collection. You can get it on pubgobshop.com. Thank you for joining me for the reading. You can also find readings of my other work here on YouTube and also get those books. This is a massive pink-clad, 599-page book. The last relevant thing is on page 599. So, you're really digging into a huge thing. I also want to make clear that this is satire. This is also review. There are literal giant poems in here where we are reviewing their movies. It is not meant to be a claiming of these characters. They do not belong to me, and I cannot pretend that they do. But even then, it's an interesting topic to explore, how these things have affected us, how we interact with them. I also think there's something really beautiful about how common it is for queer people, gay, lesbian, and transgender, and non-binary, and bigender, and etc., people to really identify with monster characters from horror movies and how hated and reviled they are, and how it feels very at home to see other people that feel like us in some way. So I think that there's something really interesting to explore. Again, thank you for being here. My name is Seven, and have a lovely day.